Hello, BookTube. We're almost a full week into the month of November. It doesn't feel it here in Boston. It's 80 degrees Fahrenheit with clear blue skies, not a hint of any kind of weather, not even the stirring of a breeze. The trees are changing color, but it's shorts and sandals weather. Nevertheless, November is committed. We are 5 days into the month, 5 days into NaNoWriMo, and that means there are all sorts of November new releases blossoming all around us like toadstools. I thought we'd go through 10 or so of those new releases in this video, just to sort of see what we make of them. I will drop very subtle hints along the way as to which ones I have already read, but quite a few of them I haven't. Quite a few of them are on my TBR for the month. And we'll start with this one by Michael Bruno. This is The Blessings of Disaster. It's a nonfiction work, fittingly, for Nonfiction November, and it's about what we can learn from massive hurricanes, huge storms that blow out electrical grids, earthquakes, massive heat waves, including fire seasons that have erupted in many countries all over the world. And the lessons involved here are not just short-term. They're also adaptive long-term lessons because, as the author points out, mitigation of disaster is our future. It's not like it was in the previous 70 years where it was whereas disasters were by definition rare and unpredictable, and you could take certain measures. If you're in an area that's prone to earthquakes, you could do your best to earthquake-proof buildings, that sort of thing. The author points out we're not in that world anymore. We're in a world where disasters are now going to happen to all of us, and they are extremely predictable. They will happen. So what can we learn in the short term and the long term about what to do with basically our infrastructure? All kinds of infrastructure. Fascinating stuff. Those of you, I'm sure that some of you are urban engineer fanatics. You're going to want to read it. Then this next one is, I'll Build You a Stairway to Paradise, and it's a biography of Bunny Mellon, who was a strange kind of figure. She's a footnote to a footnote in the Kennedy era. She's actually had a couple of really good biographies. This is the newest one. She was confidant to Jackie Kennedy and sculpted, or very much masterminded, a lot of Jackie Kennedy's renovations, stylistic renovations of the White House, including the Rose Garden that was ripped up and covered in concrete by Melania Trump. Concrete and I think some really sharp artificial metal trees. That wasn't Bunny Mellon's only claim to fame. Obviously, you can tell from her married name that she had connections to all kinds of rungs in the ladder of American oligarchy. No idea what this biography will be like. She's an engaging figure to research and write about, although quite a bit of Bunny Mellon primary sources are no longer available to any researcher. You make do. You do what you can. Then this next one is by Michael Lamb. It is A Commonwealth of Hope, Augustine's political thought. That title refers to St. Augustine. And this book is about his view of the city of man, not the city of God. His view of the politics of humans on Earth, the terrestrial, tax-driven politics of humans on Earth. And it's incredible. An amazing contribution to the study to Augustinian studies. And also very, very inviting once you get used to the author's slightly stodgy prose line. Once you get used to that, the more you know your Augustine, the more you know his century, the better, of course, you will like this book. But it's pretty inviting anyway. I don't know quite how to classify it, but I loved it. I'm very, very happy that it came across my radar. This next one is A Brief Life. You see these all the time in the publishing world. They've been going on for a long time, even in the days after Wikipedia, where a publisher will create a line of short biographies, whether it's the Penguin Live series from decades ago or the very short introductions to American presidents or British monarchs or whatever. And a new series has started, a series of ancient lives that looks to me like it's going to be taking every single person from the parallel lives of Plutarch and giving them each a 150-page biography. I'm not mocking that idea at all. I would love that. If that happened, I would love that. But I had limited expectations about what these things would be like. And the publishers decided to open with a trio of their strongest entries. And one of those, the one that surprised me the most, is Peter Stothard. This is his book, Crassus, the First Tycoon, about the Roman plutocrat who was infamous in his own day for being suspected of destroying people's property in order to buy it from them. The typical anecdote that went around Rome in his day was that your house or your warehouse would catch fire. It would be raging in front of your eyes. You would be standing there weeping, and suddenly Crassus or one of his operators would show up and make you an offer for the property. Literally fire sale prices, when it couldn't be proven that he didn't set the fire himself. Of course, he went on to greater infamy. He's known for his connection with the rebellion of Spartacus, and also for launching a land war into the east against Rome's traditional eastern enemy, and getting his asteroid handed to him, being beheaded, having his head used as a prop in a play. It's a fascinating story. You can cobble it together, speaking of Plutarch, from 2 or 3 of Plutarch's lives and a few other sources, and Stothard does a great job. I would never have thought that somebody could write even a short biography of Crassus that I would find as interesting as this. So, a very auspicious start to this series. They did Demetrius, they did Cleopatra, and they did Crassus. And if you had told me ahead of time, I would have said, well, Cleopatra, of course, will be the most interesting of those 3. I would have thought Crassus would come in dead last, but no, it's all a question of execution. Then we have a book by Andrew Weiss and Brian Brown, and it is called Accidental Czar, The Life and Time and Lies of Vladimir Putin. And I don't know what to expect from this book. I'm not particularly interested in Vladimir Putin's life before he took power in Russia. I imagine that I can imagine it. I think that all you would really need to imagine it is reading a couple of John le Carré novels. But I will give it a try and see. I don't find this particular figure very interesting. I don't know why that is. It could be just directly personal reasons. It could be that I don't find him interesting because I want him dead, and that once he's dead, I will find him interesting. I don't know. There is precedent for me thinking that way about world figures, certain world figures. It could be, but I'm duty bound to read new releases like this. Then we have a big, elaborate, colorful thing that will be a must-buy for all you comic book fans, and a must-buy for anyone going into the holiday season who has a comic book fan on their list. This is DC Greatest Events. This has a foreword by the DC Comics writer Gail Simone, and it is a tour through the big milestone events in modern DC Comics. I don't imagine it goes back very far. Got a little Jack Kirby artwork on the cover, but I don't imagine, if the cover is any indication, it probably doesn't go back very far. There are earlier events that you certainly have to include. Supergirl coming to Earth, for instance. Superboy being contacted by the Legion of Superheroes. I would assume you would include those things. But the main things are going to be Crisis on Infinite Earths, that panel up there, the death of Superman, which is still one of the highest grossing comics that DC has ever done. It will be the supervillain Bane breaking Batman's back. Maybe the betrayal of the Teen Titans by one of their own members, a young woman named Tara, and a few other things that will be fairly easy for DC fans to predict. But retrospectives like this, big hardcover, full-color retrospectives like this, are always a lot of fun, whether you know the events or not. If you don't know them, but you're interested in DC Comics, then this will be fairly engrossing. And if you do know your DC Comics continuity backwards and forwards, even more so. This will be, an argument starter, a conversation starter. Then we can move to something else that is a revisiting of an old classic. This is one in a line that this publisher has done. This is The Fall of Numenor, with illustrations by Alan Lee, who really is becoming sort of the signature Tolkien illustrator of the 21st century. And this is the narratives, the bits and pieces, the longer pieces of the rise and corruption and fall of the island kingdom of Numenor in Tolkien's Legendarium. that was such a vexed subject in 2021 because it was this material that was ripped off, dumbed down, bastardized, and also simply got wrong by the billion-dollar TV series Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. But on its own, this is a fascinating story. This was Tolkien's Atlantis. This was his great cautionary tale of a kingdom that had once been favored by the gods of Middle-earth and then became accursed by them and finally was destroyed by them. And the few survivors that managed to live and whose lineages form the background of one of the greatest characters in The Lord of the Rings. These compilation volumes, The Children of Hurin, the Beren and Luthien, The Fall of Gondolin, The Fall of Numenor, they tend to be a little choppy as reading experiences. That's helped a lot by the artwork, but even so, this will probably be only for Tolkien fans. There's no real attempt made here to do otherwise. I don't think that's a shortcoming. I think that this is mainly for Tolkien fans. And it's a lovely little volume if you have a Tolkien fan on your list. Then we have the writer Harry Sidebottom. Some of you will know his historical fiction, but he has a new book of nonfiction. This is The Mad Emperor, Heliogabalus, and the decline of the decadence of Rome. And this is a character, whether it's Heliogabalus or Elagabalus, as the 19th century put it, this is a weird, brief, strange, furtive, gay, later Roman emperor whose stories are almost certainly fabricated. The famous ones are almost certainly fabricated, but they make really good reading, very interesting reading. And I don't remember the last time this figure got a biography of any kind. I have no idea how serious this biography is. The mention of decadence in the title is worrying. That kind of moral relativism really has no place in a sober study of history. But if you had asked a metalsmith or a pottery warehouse owner or a cold cuts wholesale vendor doing business all up and down the coast, the South Coast, if you'd asked those men, do you live in a particularly decadent age, they would have said no. Or they would have said yes, but they would have said it about any age. They would have told it to Cato's face. So I worry about words like that in the title. I worry that means this won't be a serious work. But everything that I've ever encountered from this author has been serious, even the fiction. So I have high hopes. And I'm always up for ancient Roman history of any kind. Then we have something that definitely impinges on my own world of being a sexy YouTube influencer who has complete puppet-like control over every nuance of your lives. This is by Brian Boxer Wackler, MD. And it's called Influenced, the Impact of Social Media on Our Perception. And I can't help but think that the fact that the author is a medical doctor is probably going to put a spin on this that I've never read before, about how social media actually changes our perception of the world. Not how it changes our opinions, but how it warps our view of the world. I don't know if this will be censorious. I have no idea. I myself am totally in favor of the rest of you having Steve-colored glasses looking at the world. Your question at all times, in all circumstances, should be, what would Steve do? But I don't think I'll be mentioned in this book. Probably the usual suspects will be mentioned in this book. You can't write a book like this without talking about PewDiePie or Ben Shapiro in a way. I'll have to read it and see. I am very much interested, though, in this growing trend of books that are looking at social media as a legitimate study, as a legitimate thing to study. It's bloody well overdue. So I'm hoping for more and more books along the same lines, and better books, tougher, stronger. There's research out there, not much, but some. These could be a lot meatier than a lot of the ones that I've read. Maybe this will be one. Then we have history, specifically medieval Crusade era history. This is by John Hostler, and it is Jerusalem Falls. 7 centuries of war and peace, looking at the fact that the city of Jerusalem passed from one conqueror's hand to another dozens and dozens of times in the course of 700 years. And the impression I get is that this author is going to talk about life in the city as much or far more than he's going to talk about military maneuvers in the field, which would be pretty interesting. That would be pretty refreshing. I don't read enough on this subject, so I'd be very interested to see it. Then we have something by Austin Sutil. I could be mispronouncing the author's name and the title of the author's book, but this is a fantasy novel. This is The King of Juthirima. This is book 1 in a series in which a group of high school students are whisked to another world, an alien fantasy world, in which their paranormal abilities play a key role in the destiny of that kingdom, or could, if they aren't wiped out or if they can't keep peace amongst themselves. It seems really energetic and engaging to me, and I don't have much fantasy of any age group on my list for November, so perfectly willing to give it a try. It's the first book in a series. As always, it won't be a standalone novel. God forbid anybody write a standalone science fiction or fantasy novel. But even so, as long as it doesn't end in mid-sentence, as long as it has a climax of its own, then I'm moderately okay with it. A lot of the problem with books, that these endless books that come in series, is that the author thinks that they've been so much influenced by bad streaming TV that they've started to think, especially the self-published authors who don't have anybody to tell them otherwise, they're starting to think that they don't need to put a viable, independently standing climax in book 1 and book 2 and book 3 and book 4 and on and on. And they do. You do have to do that. Every book has to be a story of its own, no matter whether it's connected to a longer story or not. Every book has to be a story on its own. We'll see. This next one is utterly charming. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. It is connected, of course, with another event that's going on, not necessarily a BookTube event, but NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. And because of the proliferation of writing in the world, with sites like Wattpad and whatnot, that there are a dozen sites like Wattpad where people just can write whatever they want on their phone. Young people can spend their study period writing the next chapter in their novel to a readership of thousands of people, sometimes, or more, and to eventual book contracts. Anyone in the world can do that on a blog, or even write it in your own spare time on a WordPress document and then publish it on Amazon overnight for virtually no money. We live in a proliferation of an era that is seeing the proliferation of writing of all kinds. So this book really touches on that, and I didn't expect it to be as good as it is. It is absolutely terrific. It's called The Life of an Unknown Author, an anthology on writing and publishing from some of the best authors you haven't yet read. It's edited by Jody Cowles, Rachel Mitchell, Leslie Stewart, with a foreword by Joy Eggerichs Reed. If you've never heard of those people, I believe that's the whole point. Hello, my name is Unknown Author. This is all about it's about a lot of things. It's about how, for instance, to publish, and how to stop being an unknown author. It's got a lot of practical advice in it, but the parts of it that I loved were the parts that actually are reflections of the fact that we live surrounded by publication. And what to do about that? What do you do about that? Even some authors, some of them are sort of quasi-profiled in this book, even quite a few of those unknown authors make a decent living. They are able to live off what they do on Amazon with maybe a little side gig here or there, but it's the bulk of the money that they get. It involves a huge amount of work on their part, a huge amount of hustle. And they know perfectly well, even when their monthly statements are coming in and looking kind of good, they know perfectly well that nobody knows who they are. I think that whole subject is fascinating, much like social media. I think this is a phenomenon that should be more studied than it is. And this is a wonderfully inviting step in the right direction. Then we have a book. This is an author that needs no introduction from me. James Dashner, the author of the Maze Runner books, has a new book that is set centuries after the conclusion of his Maze Runner series. This is The Maze Cutter. Those of you who remember how the Maze Runner books ends, this is centuries after that, when semi-protected enclave, one of the only places that seems likely to survive the devastation of the world, now wants to reach out to the rest of the world, see what's out there. And there's, of course, a plot. There's a MacGuffin involved, too. Boy, oh boy, can this author write. Say what you want about him or about the level of sophistication in the Maze Runners books, but boy, oh boy, are they page-turning candy. And the Maze Cutter proves that uh, talent has not gone away. It has not lessened at all. Then we have something, I think I've mentioned this on this channel before, but I have now read it, and it was great. This is Cathal Nolan, and this is his new book, Mercy, Humanity in War. Really a pendant study to his big book on the allure of battle. That was his earlier book, The Allure of Battle. The Allure of Battle is one of those amazing doorstop books that sticks in your mind and elevates in your estimation as time goes on. I really do think it's a masterpiece. And this is too. This is too. This is the opposite of The Allure of Battle. This is about all the ways in which humans show mercy and compassion even in the height of battle. This book, even more than the first one, raises a million questions about what warfare actually is, when it is so clearly something that almost none of its participants want on any level. This author has an unbelievable gift for writing deeply, steeply intelligent history that anyone can engage with. I cannot recommend this book strongly enough. Then we have something for the gays. You got to have something for the gays. I'm going to try this. This is the first book in a series, of course. They're all first books in series. This is Monstrous Intent by Alice Winters. I don't see anything monstrous on that cover, but that's the whole point, is that in this series, apparently, there are monsters that can hide in human shape. And there are also monster hunters. And I haven't tried this yet, but I gather that the storyline is what happens when a monster hunter and a monster in human guise fall hard for each other. Is it the monster hunter who convinces the monster not to monster anymore? Or does the monster convince the monster hunter to join the dark side? Or does it end in mutual destruction? As so many gay relationships do. I don't know. I'll find out and I'll report back. Then we have something that'll be pretty much for all of you. Some of these things are more specific recommendations than others. The DC Comics event book, for instance. But this one is for all readers. I have a soft spot for books and about reading. I'd be willing to bet a lot of you do too. How could you not? This is by Emma Smith, and it's called Portable Magic, A History of Books and Their Readers. And it looks lovely. I admit that I don't require much work from books like this in order to like them, annotate them, and also keep them, put them on a shelf just across the room here. There are dozens and dozens of these kinds of books on that shelf. I don't have a high bar here. I don't mean any offense to Emma Smith. I don't think I've ever read Emma Smith. I haven't read this book. But I don't have a high bar for how good this book has to be before I will love it and keep it. Maybe it will surprise me. Quite a few of them do. Then we have a big picture book from Rizzoli, the great art publisher. This is by Galen Rosenwachs, with a foreword by Carl Safina, who is a natural history, an ocean-oriented natural history writer that I love. His books are fantastic. Carl Safina's books are fantastic. They are great. This is Sperm Whales, the gentle giants of the oceans. All about Moby Dick. And it'll have, obviously, state-of-the-art photography and all the latest information that we have about sperm whales, which is quite a bit more than we had even 10 years ago. When these creatures come to the surface, you can tag them. They don't feel it, and the tags are more and more durable with every decade of refinement, and they give back a lot of information about what sperm whale behavior. We still don't know all that much about it. I think if you were to do a tentacle up probe, a poll of all of the giant squids in the world, I think they would pretty much all object to the word gentle. And also, I've spent a lot of time on Earth's oceans, and I have heard a lot of stories from mariners in all kinds of walks of life, everywhere in the world, all the waters of the world, and almost invariably, if they tell me a story about how they were minding their own business, in other words, not whaling, and not line fishing or anything like that, if they tell me a story about how they were minding their own business when they were attacked by a whale, invariably in those stories, the whale is a sperm whale. Now, I don't know if that's anecdotal, of course. I don't know if that bears scientific evaluation, and I don't know why, except that sperm whales are carnivores, and carnivores are trouble. So, unlike most other whales, sperm whales have teeth. They they hunt and rend and kill their opponents in a gigantic cloud of blood. That could have something to do with the fact that, anecdotally anyway, among the mariners of the world, they have a reputation as anything but gentle. But I know exactly what the subheader there is meant to do, and I approve. And I love books like this anyway. Then we have something that we saw on this channel already. This is by Andy Greenberg. It is Tracers in the Dark, looking for crime in the dark web bowels of cryptocurrency, the world of crypto bros. I had a feeling that I would enjoy this book, but I was worried that a lot of the crypto details would go over my head. And I was right about the one and wrong about the other. This is just spectacularly enjoyable. Just spectacularly enjoyable. The author takes you well in hand. He is not writing for crypto bros. He's writing for you. He knows he has a fascinating story to tell, and he makes sure that you've got your crypto feet underneath you before he launches into the details, and the details are incredible. Oh my God. I don't know what you would call this, cyber true crime, but it was so winning. Just so incredibly winning. Then we have, the next is a book, we're almost done, don't worry. I won't go on forever. I could do 100 more books. This next book is the type of book that we've established on this channel for years now. Should, in fact, only be written by me. But what are you going to do? This is instead by Jules Howard, and it is Wonder Dog, The Science of Dogs and Their Unique Friendship with Humans. And despite the fact that I'm the only person who should legitimately write a book like this, this was wonderful. It gives you a lot of science about dogs, but what scientists know about how they view the world, how they problem solve, that sort of thing. A lot of those conclusions really read like they were done by a Vulcan visiting from, Alpha Centauri. They don't really, a lot of those conclusions don't really line up with your daily reality with your dog, and don't really try to understand the discrepancy between what they're saying and what you're seeing, which is what's bothered me about dog research books forever. But the touching, the wonderful parts of this book deal with that unique friendship. Because as I've said many, many times, that is the case. I know all you cat people will say otherwise, but there are quite a few floppy, squishy, helpless, adorable, totally dependent cats. But as a rule, that's not what cats are like. And as a rule, the best that you could characterize their relationship with humans is a kind of tolerantly friendly partnership. But most cats, unless you have declawed them, most cats, if you put them out the front door in a suburban area or, God forbid, a wild area, if they weren't killed themselves, could support themselves. Most of them could do that. It wouldn't be hard for them to revert. Dogs, it's something different. Dogs are the only species that has developed a partnership with humans. I believe that their partnership with humans made humans what they are. Literally allowed humans the space to grow their brains into what they are. I believe that partnership is much, much older than the standard, thumbnail sketch of this subject would have you believe. I think that dogs and humans evolved hand in paw, and that this relationship, this partnership, goes back a long, long way, 27,000 years at least. I found this book charming. I scratch my head at times. There are times when you just don't know what the author's thinking. You want to know. I didn't actually check, but there are times in this book, as in so many other dog books, where your main question when you read a passage would be, do you have a dog? Do you have a dog? Nevertheless, this book sins a lot less than most of them do, so I strongly recommend it for you dog people. And then we will finish up with a reprint of a classic, or a semi-classic. This is Winter in the Air and Other Stories by Sylvia Townsend Warner. Lovely thing by Faber and Faber. They're bringing out a few, I think, Sylvia Townsend Warners. There isn't much from this author to bring out, but it's all crystalline good. I don't know why this author doesn't have a higher reputation, higher profile than she does. There are some stories in Winter in the Air that are wonderful, that memorably wonderful. Great to see it coming out. Again, can't wait to see what I'm assuming it will be a pretty little paperback. I can't wait to see what kind of shape it is and whatnot. And I should also read up on whether or not there are other volumes that are coming out like this one. But those of you who have not read Sylvia Townsend Warner, and I'm assuming that's most of you, you should give her a try. I don't actually know. I know she died in like the 60s or 70s. So I don't actually know if any of her really early stuff might be out of copyright and on Project Gutenberg. I didn't check before this video. And I have no idea how available she is in the Hughes bookstore market. I haven't seen any books of hers at the Brattle in a decade. But who knows what's out there? And if you're looking for a new author, someone with a very light, very piercingly intelligent tone, you might want to give this author a try. And that's it. That is just a selection of November books coming out across the spectrum of what may or may not interest. I thought some of them might be of interest to you. They're all of interest to me. So I'll wrap this sort of November prospectus up, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.